Welcome, dear listener, to a journey through the boundless expanses of the mind. Prepare to be captivated, enthralled, and utterly enchanted as we embark on an odyssey guided by the timeless wisdom of Takuan Soho in his masterpiece, The Unfettered Mind. Picture, if you will, a tranquil garden, lush with the fragrance of cherry blossoms and alive with the melody of chirping birds. Here, amidst the serenity of nature, Takuan Soho invites us to explore the depths of our own consciousness, to unravel the mysteries of the mind, and to discover the true essence of freedom. But be warned, dear listener, for this is no ordinary journey. With every turn of the page, you will be swept away into a realm where boundaries blur and limitations dissolve. Through the artful prose of Takuan Soho, we will delve into the heart of Zen philosophy, uncovering profound insights into the nature of existence and the path to enlightenment. Join us now as we embark on an adventure unlike any other, where the boundaries of reality fade away and the unfettered mind reigns supreme. Prepare to be inspired, enlightened, and forever transformed by the timeless wisdom of Takuan Soho. Welcome to the Unfettered Mind. Chapter 1. The affliction of remaining in ignorance states that in the practice of Buddhism there are 52 steps, and of all these, the space where the mind fixates on one thing is called the place of permanent belonging. Remaining is equivalent to stopping, and stopping means the mind is suspended for some reason, which can be anything. To refer to martial arts terms, noticing for the first time the sword moving with the intention to strike you, if you think about meeting it as it is, your mind will just stop at that position, your movements will disappear, and you will be cut by your opponent. That is what stopping means. Although you see the sword moving dangerously towards you, if your mind is not stopped by it, and you have the same rhythm as its advance, if you do not think about striking your opponent and have neither reasoning nor prejudices, if at the moment you see the sword swing your mind is not stopped at all, and you can actually move to snatch the sword that was going to cut you, it will be yours, and on the contrary, you will be the first to attack your enemy. In Zen, this action is known as seizing the spear, and conversely, piercing the man who came to pierce you with the spear is a weapon. The essence of this is that the sword you snatch from your opponent becomes the object that pierces him. This is what you call in your style no sword, regardless of whether it is because of your opponent's blow, your own thrust, the man, the sword, the position, or the rhythm. Your mind deviates anyway, your actions will falter, and you will be irremediably cut. If you stand in front of your rival, your mind will be taken by him. You must not put it in you. Locking thoughts in the body is something that is done only at the beginning of training, when you are a beginner. The mind cannot be taken by the sword. If you focus on the rhythm of movement, you can lose yourself in it. If you place your mind in your own sword, you will stay there. Your thoughts will stop at any of these places. You will become an empty shell. These martial arts situations can be applied to Buddhism. This cessation of the mind in Buddhism is called illusion. It is said that the affliction of remaining in ignorance is the unmovable wisdom of all Buddhas. Although wisdom means immobility, this does not mean that it is as insensitive as wood or stone. It moves like the mind forward or backward, left or right in the 10 directions and towards the 8 points. And the mind that does not stop at all is called unmovable wisdom. Fudo Myo holds a sword in his right hand and holds a vajra in his left hand. He shows his teeth and his eyes shine with anger. His figure remains firm, ready to defeat the evil spirits that interfere with the Buddhist law. This is not hidden in any territory of the world. His form belongs to that of a protector of Buddhism, while his incarnation is that of unmovable wisdom. This is how it is shown to living beings. Perceived in this way, the ordinary man is afraid and has no intention of becoming an enemy of Buddhism. One who is close to enlightenment understands that fear manifests unmovable wisdom and dispels all illusion. For the individual who can make his knowledge evident and is capable of physically practicing this mental weapon, no evil spirit will proliferate. This is the purpose of Fudo Myo's mission. It is said that what is called Fudo Myo is the immovable and non-oscillating body. Unwavering means not being stopped by anything. Immovability is called the action of looking at something, and not paralyzing the mind. This is because when thoughts fixate on one thing, multiple movements occur. Since our interior is filled with prejudices, when movements cease, the mind that was stopped begins to move, but it does not do so at all. If 10 men come at you with sharp swords and you manage to defend yourself without stopping the mind at each action, smoothly moving on to the next without a hitch, you will not need appropriate choice for all. Although the mind acts against each of the 10 men, if it does not stop in front of any and reacts consecutively, appropriate action will be necessary. But on the contrary, if the mind stops in front of each man, although you manage to avoid his sharp sword when the next one comes, the correct action will have disappeared. Considering that Cannon has 1,000 arms on his body, if the mind stops at the end holding a bow, the other 999 limbs will be useless. This is because the mind does not focus on each of the useful arms. As for Cannon, why would he have one arm attached to a body? This form is made for the purpose of indicating to men that if their unmovable wisdom manifests, although a body has one arm, each will be useful. When facing a tree, if one looks at only one of its leaves, one will not see all the others. When the eye does not fixate on any, one sees the complete tree without thinking of anything. All the leaves are visible to the human eye, but if one leaf holds our concentration, it will be as if the others were not there. One who has understood this will realize that he is no different from Cannon with his 1,000 arms and 1,000 eyes. The ordinary man contentedly believes that he is blessed with his 1,000 arms and 1,000 eyes. The half-wise man, wondering how someone can have 1,000 eyes, qualifies it as a lie and engages in slander. But if one now understands a little better, in a respectful belief based on principle, one will not need the ordinary man's faith in the other's slander, and will understand that Buddhism with this single thing manifests its principle well. All religions proceed in this manner. I have seen that Shintoism is particularly like this. The ordinary man thinks only on the surface. The man who attacks Buddhism is even worse, and there is a great variety of religions. But essentially, all converge towards the same conclusion. In any case, when one practices discipline and moves from the territory of beginners to unmovable wisdom, one makes a return and falls back to the level of principle. Instead of permanence, there is a reason for this. Once again, one can speak in reference to martial arts. The beginner knows nothing, neither of the posture of his body nor of the position of his sword, and his mind does not stop anywhere in him. If a man strikes, he simply responds to the attack without thinking, while he studies several things and is taught the different ways to adopt a posture, how to hold his sword and where to put his mind. His concentration stops in several places. Now, if he wants to strike an opponent, he feels extraordinarily uncomfortable. Later, as the days pass and time accumulates, neither the postures of his body nor those of holding his sword weigh on his mind. His spirit simply returns to how it was at the beginning, when he knew nothing and nothing had yet been taught to him at all. This is how we see that the principle is the same as the end. When counting from 1 to 10, the first and the last number become adjacent. In the musical domain, for example, when the initial lowest tone transitions to the final highest tone, the lowest and the highest seem to come together. Buddhism, when its depths are reached, resembles the man who knows nothing of the Buddha or Buddhist laws. He has neither ornaments nor anything that can attract the attention of men. The ignorance and afflictions of the beginning, instead of the permanence and unmovable wisdom that come after, become one. Intellectual function disappears and ends in a state of non-thought. If one reaches the deepest point, the arms, legs, and body remember what to do, but the mind does not participate in this act. The Buddhist priest Bukoku wrote that, although he does not mentally guard the small mountain fields, the scarecrow is not in vain. Everything is thus to elaborate a scarecrow that is in the mountain. A human figure is modeled, and a bow and arrow are placed in its hands. Birds and beasts flee upon seeing it, regardless of whether this figure has a mind. If the servants are afraid and flee, it has not been created in vain, for it fulfills its function. Here is an example of the behavior of people who have reached the depths of any path. While the hands, feet, and body move, the mind does not stop anywhere, and one does not know where it resides, remaining in a state of non-thought, of non-mind. One has reached the level of the scarecrow of the mountain fields, of the ordinary man who has not found his way. We can say that from the beginning he had no wisdom, and it will never arise, no matter the circumstances. The highest wisdom of all, which is found in the most remote place, will not come out at all. Finally, the pseudo-scholar lets his wisdom out of his house, which is ridiculous. The decorum of today's priests can be considered in this way. It is a question of shame. There is training in principle and in technique. Training in principle is, as I have already explained, when you arrive, nothing is perceived. It is as if you have rejected all concentration. I have spoken of this in previous ones. If you do not train in the technique and only fill yourself with principles, your body and hands will not work. Training in technique, applied to martial arts, is the training that, practiced again and again, makes the 5 postures of the body one. Even if you know the principles, you must be perfectly free in the use of the technique. Thus, you will handle well the sword that you carry with you. If you do not have a deep clarity on each principle, it is probable that you will fail. The technique and principles are like the wheel of a cart. 3. The interval where no hair enters. There is something like an interval where no hair can enter. We can talk about this in terms of martial arts. The interval is when 2 things meet each other, and no hair can slip between them. When you clap and simultaneously shout, the space between the 2 actions does not allow a hair to enter. It is not about thinking about clapping, thinking about shouting, and then doing it, which would give an interval between the 2. You clap, and just at that moment you shout. Similarly, if your mind stops in front of the sword with which a man is going to strike you, there will be an interval and your own action will be lost. But if in the space between your opponent's sword and your own action you are unable to introduce the width of a hair, your opponent's weapon must become yours. The same thing happens in discussions. In Buddhism, we hate this pause and the fact that the mind stays on one thing or another. We call this the affliction due to the stop. It is like a ball sailing on a fast current. We respect the mind that flows thus without stopping for an instant. Everywhere. 4. The action of the spark and the stone. There is the action of the spark and the stone, which amounts to what has been treated previously. As soon as one strikes the stone, light appears, just as the flame appears at the moment the stone appears. There is no instant. This signifies the absence of the interval that holds the mind back. It would be a mistake to attribute speed to this movement. In reality, it highlights the fact that the mind should not be stopped by things. It is even said that speed should not be able to paralyze the mind. When it stops, it will be captured by the opponent. On the other hand, if the mind intends to be quick and act swiftly, it will be captured by its own contemplation. Among Saicho's poems is the following: "You are spoken of only as a man who abhors the world. I can only wish that your mind does not stop at this temporary lodging." Attribute this poem to the Gucci courtesan. If we take the last part of this verse, "I can only wish that your mind does not stop," we can consider it as the very essence of martial arts. It is crucial that the mind does not stop at seni. If you wonder what the Buddha is, you must raise your clenched fist. If you ponder the ultimate meaning of Buddhist law before words die, you must answer, a single plum blossom branch or the garden cypress. It is not about choosing a right or wrong answer. We respect the mind that does not stop, for it will not do so for color or scent. Although the form of this unmoving mind is venerated like a god, respected like a Buddha, and called the mind of Sen, or the ultimate significance, if you think about things and then speak, even if you utter golden words and mysterious verses, it will simply be the affliction of the place of permanence. It cannot be said that the action of the stone and spark has the speed of lightning. It is called unmovable wisdom. When someone is called and immediately responds, without doubting the why and wherefore of the request, it is the affliction of the place of permanence. The affliction of the place of permanence and the ordinary man are connected to the mind that stops or is moved by something and sent into confusion. To be called and respond without interval is the wisdom of all Buddhas. The Buddha and all sentient beings are not two. Such a mind is called God or Buddha. Although there are many paths like the gods of poetry or confusion, all share the clarity of a single mind. Explaining the meaning of the mind with words, we say things like, everyone possesses this mind, or the good and bad events of morning and night conform to karma, or The fact that one forsakes his home and leads his country to ruin reflects his character, for good and evil both depend on each individual's mind. If people want to know how this mind is, they would simply confuse themselves with it, if there isn't a truly enlightened person to show it to them. In this world, there are certainly people who do not know the mind, but I also specify that there are those who understand it, strange as it may seem. Though occasionally there are people who come to understand it, they generally do not act accordingly. So even if the mind is well explained, it is unlikely to be truly understood in depth. One can explain water without wetting the mouth. One can fully expose the nature of fire, but the lips will not warm without touching real water or fire. No one will know these things. Even the explanation from an audiobook will not succinctly convey the nourishment, but it will not satisfy hunger. It is unlikely that one person will understand another's explanation. In this world, there are Buddhists and Confucianists who explain the mind, but their actions do not resemble their explanations. The understanding of these individuals is not truly enlightened, and if their minds do not pass through this, they will have no understanding. Many of those who study do not understand the mind, but it is not a matter of numbers. No one has a good mind state. We must understand that the enlightenment of the mind depends on the depth of its effort. Where to place the mind? We say the following: if one places his mind on the enemy's body action, it will be caught by the opponent's movements. If his mind stops on the opponent's sword, it will be caught by that same weapon. If one puts his thoughts in the intention to strike what his opponent possesses, his intention will be taken by those bad intentions. If one focuses on his own sword, it will be the one that captures his mind. If one concerns himself with intentions not to be struck, his mind will be stopped by those thoughts. If one places himself in the posture of the other, his mind will stop there. All this means that there is no place to put the mind. Some people have said, no matter where I put my thoughts, my intentions remain where I direct my concentration, and I am lost, facing the opponent. That is why I place my mind just below my navel and do not let it wander. That is why I am able to adapt according to the actions of my enemy. This is reasonable, but from the highest viewpoint of Buddhism, placing the mind just below the navel and not letting it wander belongs to a low level of understanding, not a high level. It is at the level of discipline and training. It is at the level of seriousness. Mencio said, "Seek the lost mind." This is also not the highest level. It has the sense of seriousness. Regarding the lost mind, I have written about it previously. If you consider placing your mind under your navel and not letting it wander, it will be caught by the mind that thinks on this level. You will not be able to progress, and you will also not enjoy freedom. This leads us to the next question. If placing my mind under the navel serves no purpose, as it renders me incapable and without freedom, then where should I place my mind within my body? The answer is as follows. If you put it in your right hand, it will be caught by that extremity, and your body will lose the function of the mind. If it is placed in the eye, it will be caught by it, and you will not have your mental capacity. If the mind is in your right foot, it will become its property, and you will not possess the function of the mind. No matter where you place your thought, if you put it in one place, the rest of the body will lose its function. If that's the case, the question arises, where should one then place their mind? The answer is, if you don't put it anywhere, it will go into all parts of your body and spread over its entire surface. Thus, when it enters your hand, it will perform the function of the hand, and when it enters your foot, it will perform the function of the foot, and when it enters the eye, it will perform the function of the eye. If you settle on one place and establish the mind there, it will be caught by the chosen place and lose its function. If you think, you will be caught by your thoughts. That's why it's recommended to set aside thoughts and discrimination, to distance the mind from the whole body, not to stop it here and there, and when finally it visits those places, it will perform the function and act without error. Fixing the mind in one place is called falling into one-sidedness. One-sidedness is the propensity to a place. Correction consists of moving anywhere. The correct mind is shown by extending it to the whole body. It is not limited to one place. When the mind prefers one place and avoids another, it is called one-sided mind. One-sidedness is contemptible. Being stopped by anything, no matter what it is falling into one-sidedness and being despised by those who travel the path. If a person does not have the following thought, "Where should I place my mind?" then it will spread throughout the body, moving anywhere, without concentrating in one place. The mind cannot be used by letting it go everywhere, responding to the opponent's movements. If thoughts move throughout the body, when the hand is needed, one must use the mind that is there. When the foot is needed, one must use the mind that is in that place. But if you determine one single area to place it, when you try to withdraw it, it will remain there without function. If you hold the mind like a tied cat, not allowing it to move, it will remain frozen, abandoned inside your body, going nowhere. Discipline is the effort not to stop the mind in one place. This action is the subject and essence. If it is not placed anywhere, it will be everywhere, even when moving the mind out of the body. If it is sent in one direction, it will be lacking in 9 others. The 6th, the correct mind and the confused mind. The correct mind is one that does not stay in one place, which extends throughout the body and being. The confused mind, on the other hand, is one that congests in one place, thinking about something. When the correct mind stops and attaches to one place, it becomes the confused mind. When the correct mind gets lost, its functions disappear. For this reason, it is important that it does not deviate by staying in one place. The correct mind is like water. On the other hand, the confused mind is like ice, unable to wash hands or head with it. When the ice melts, it becomes water and flows everywhere, able to wash hands, feet, or anything. If the mind freezes in an area and remains as one thing, it would be like frozen water, unable to be freely used, ice without the ability to wash the body. When the mind melts and is used like water, extending without restrictions, it can be sent wherever one wants. That is the correct mind. The 7th, the spirit of existing spirit and the spirit of non-thought. The existing spirit is the same as the confused spirit and is called the spirit that exists. Think in one direction and do not consider the subject. When there is an object of thought within, discrimination and thoughts arise, which is why it is known as the existing spirit. Non-thought is the same as the correct spirit. It does not freeze or fixate on one place, does not discriminate or excessively think, but wanders throughout the body and spreads throughout the being. Non-thought is located in a particular place, but it is like wood or stone. It is called non-thought when there is no place to stop. When it is paralyzed, it is because there is something in the mind. If nothing is in thought, it is called non-thought. It is also called non-thought without thoughts. When non-thought has been well developed, it does not stop at one thing and lacks nothing. It is like water overflowing and existing on its own. It appears properly when faced with a moment of need. The mind that fixes and stops at one place does not function freely, just as the wheels of a car turn because they are rigid in their place. Clinging to one place would prevent them from turning. The mind is also something that does not function if it focuses on one situation. If some thought is in the mind, even if you hear someone else's words, you will not really hear them. This does not happen because your mind has stopped with your own thoughts. If your focus goes in the direction of those thoughts, even if you listen, you will not listen, and even if you look, you will not see. This happens because you have something in your mind that is thought. If you are able to eliminate that thing that is there, your mind will become non-thought and will function when necessary using the appropriate form. The mind that thinks to remove what is in it will be occupied by this task. If one decides not to think about it, one can get rid of these thoughts and acquire non-thought. By approaching the mind in this way, one will then achieve this state without problems. If one tries to do it suddenly, one will never succeed. An old poem says, "I will not think." Then it will spread throughout the body, moving anywhere without focusing on a specific place. You cannot use the mind by letting it go everywhere, responding to the opponent's movements. If thoughts move throughout the body, when the hand is needed, one must use the mind that is there. When the foot is required, one must use the mind that is in that place. But if one determines only one area to place it, when trying to remove it, it will remain there devoid of function. If one holds the mind like a tied cat, not allowing it to move, it will remain frozen inside your body, going nowhere. Discipline is the effort not to stop the mind in one place. This action is the subject and essence. If it is not placed anywhere, it will be everywhere, even moving the mind out of the body. If directed in one direction, it will be lacking in 9 others. The correct mentality and the confused mentality. The correct mentality is one that does not remain in one place, that extends throughout the body and being. The confused mentality, on the other hand, is one that congests in one place by thinking about something. When the correct mentality stops and settles in one place, it becomes the confused mentality. When the correct mentality is lost, its functions disappear. That is why it is important not to stray by staying in one place. The correct mentality is like water, while the confused mentality is like ice, unable to wash hands or head with it. When ice melts, it becomes water and flows everywhere, capable of washing hands, feet, or anything else. If the mind freezes in one area and remains as one thing, it would be like frozen water unable to be used freely, ice without the ability to cleanse the body. When the mind melts and is used like water, extending without restrictions, it can be sent wherever one desires. This is the correct mentality. The existing mentality and the mentality of non-mentality. The existing mentality is the same as the confused mentality and is called the mentality that exists. If one thinks in one direction and does not consider the subject, when the object of thought is present, discrimination and thoughts arise within it. That is why it is known as the existing mentality. Non-mentality is the same as the correct mentality. It does not freeze or fixate on one place, does not discriminate or excessively think, but wanders throughout the body and extends to the entire being. Non-mentality is located in a particular place. However, it is like wood or stone called non-mentality because it has no place to stop. When it is paralyzed, it is because there is something in the mind. If nothing is present in the thoughts, it is called non-mentality. It is also called non-mentality without thoughts. When non-mentality is well developed, it does not stop at one thing or lack any. It is like water overflowing and existing on its own. It appears properly when faced with a moment of necessity. The mentality that fixates and stops at one place does not function freely, just as the wheels of a car turn because they are rigid in their place. If one clings to one place, they would not turn. The mind is also something that does not function if it is concentrated on one situation. If there is a thought inside the mind, even if you hear someone else's words, you will not really hear them. This does not happen because your mind has stopped with your own thoughts. If your concentration is directed in the direction of those thoughts, even if you listen, you will not hear, and even if you look, you will not see. This happens because you have something in your mind, it is thought. If you are able to eliminate that thing that is there, your mind will become non-mentality and will function when it is necessary using the appropriate form. The mind that thinks to remove what is in it will be occupied by this task. If one decides not to think about it, one can get rid of these thoughts and acquire non-mentality by approaching the mind in this way. Later, one will reach this condition without problem. If one tries to do it suddenly, one will never succeed. An old poem says, "I will not think about thinking." It is something that is in everyone's thoughts. Simply, do not think about not thinking at all. 8. Throwing the gourd into the water, pushing it down and turning it down means doing it by hand. When a gourd is thrown into the water and pressed to the bottom, it will suddenly jump to the side no matter the situation. This is something that will not stop at one place. The mind of a man who has reached this state does not stop at one thing, not even for a moment. It is like pushing the gourd into the water. 9. Generating the mind without a place of doubt. In our way of writing in Chinese-Japanese, this is pronounced omo shijin. No matter what a person does, when they generate a mind that thinks to do something, that mind will stop on that object. Therefore, one must conceive the mind without a place where it can attach. If the mind is not generated, the hand will not progress. Those who, when moving, generate the mind that ordinarily stops in that movement but do not at all in the course of action, are called the consummate men of all paths. Limited mind arises from a stopped mind, likewise with the cycle of transmigration. This paralysis becomes the bonds of life and death. We look at cherry blossoms or autumn leaves, and while we generate those we look at, it is essential not to stop on them. Jay's poem says, "The flower that would give its fragrance in front of the door of my bush would do it anyway. I, however, sit and watch. How sad this world is." This means that the flower releases its fragrance with non-mentality, while I watch it without my thoughts straying too far. What sadness that! The mind has passed through me so much. It becomes a secret principle not to stop the mind at one place while listening and observing. Seriousness develops with the saying, "an objective without distractions," the mind being established in one place and not appearing elsewhere. Even later, if the sword deviates to strike, it is considered essential not to allow the mind to move in the direction of the strike. Especially in such cases, like receiving orders from your Lord, one must respect serious speech by keeping it in mind. In Buddhism, we also have the mentality of seriousness. When the bell of reverence rings 3 times, we join our hands and bow. This attitude of respect, where the name of the Buddha is chanted first, is synonymous with having an objective without distractions or a mind without confusion. In Buddhism, the mentality of seriousness is not the deepest level. Holding the mind and preventing it from becoming confused is the discipline of the novice who begins to learn this practice. When applied for a long time, it leads to progress towards the level of freedom, where one can let the mind go in any direction. The level mentioned above of generating the mind without a place of stay is the highest of all. The word serious indicates that the mind must be under control and not sent anywhere, for in doing so it would become confused. At this level, there is a hardening of the mind, and no negligence is allowed. It can be compared as if a baby sparrow were caught by a cat. To prevent this from happening again, a rope is tied around the cat, and it is not allowed to escape. If my mind is treated like a tied cat, it will not be free and probably will not be able to function properly. If the animal is well trained, the rope is untied, and it can go wherever it wants. Then, even if they are together, the cat will not catch the sparrow. Acting in this way corresponds to the sense of the phrase, "generate the mind," without a place for it to dwell. Freeing my mind and ignoring it like the cat. Even if it goes where it wants, it means using the mind without it stopping anywhere. If we put this in terms of martial arts, the mind does not stop at the hand wielding the sword, completely indifferent to the threatening movement. One strikes and cuts one's opponent. One does not fixate one's mind on the other. The opponent is the void. I am the void. The part holding the sword, the weapon itself, is the void. Understand this, but do not let your mind be caught by the void. When the Kamakura priest Zed Mugaku was captured during riots in China and was about to be shot, Sigata, with the speed of lightning, cut through the spring breeze, and the soldier threw down his sword and fled. Mugaku meant that by wielding the sword in an extremely short time, the time it takes for lightning to strike, there is neither mind nor thought for the attacking weapon, nor mind for the one who is to be struck, neither for the attacker nor for the weapon itself. I, who am about to be cut in a flash, resembling cutting through the breeze blowing in the spring sky. It is the mind that does not stop in any case, and it is unlikely that the sword will react by cutting through the wind. Completely forget the mind, and you will do all things correctly. When you dance, the hand holds the fan, and the foot keeps the rhythm. By not forgetting anything and staying focused on the correct action with hands and feet, dancing precisely, it cannot be said that you are skillful. If the mind stops in the hands and feet, none of your actions will be singular. If you do not completely set aside the mind, everything you do will be wrong. 10. Search for the lost mind. This title is a saying of Mencius, which means that one must search for the lost mind and bring it back to its proper place. If a dog, a cat, or a rooster escapes with an uncertain fate, they are searched for and brought back. Similarly, when the mastermind of the body strays from a perverse path, why not search for it and bring it back to oneself? This is the most reasonable. But there is also a saying from Shao that it is essential to lose the mind. The general idea is that when the mind is attached, it becomes tired, and like the cat, it is unable to function as it should. If the mind does not stop with things, it will not become dirty and can be used correctly. Let it go where it wants, for if it becomes dirty and stops, we are warned not to let that happen and encouraged to search for it and bring it back to ourselves. This is the first step of training. We must be like the lotus flower that does not become dirty with the mud from which it emerges. Even if the dirt exists, we must not grieve for it. We make our mind a well-polished surface that does not become dirty even if plunged into the earth. Pressuring the mind has the effect of taking away its freedom. Putting it under control is something that is done only at the beginning. If one remains like this all one's life, one will never reach the highest level. In fact, one will not rise above the lowest. When training, it is good to remember Mencius's saying, "Search for the lost mind." However, the final word is in Shao Kanchi's phrase, "It is essential to lose the mind." Among the sayings of the priest Chunfeng was the following, "Have a mind that has let go." The meaning of these words is exactly the same as that of Shao Ke, who says that we must rid ourselves of our thoughts. In this way, we are not warned against not searching for the lost mind or attaching it somewhere. Chunfeng also said, "Make no provisions for retirement." This means having a mind that is not agitated, meaning a man must bear in mind that even if he advances well once or twice, he must not retreat when tired or in unusual circumstances. Throw a ball into a fast stream and it will never stop. There is a proverb that says, "Throw any ball into a fast stream and it will never stop." This means that if you throw a ball into swiftly flowing water, it will float on the waves and never stop. Break the boundary between before and after. There is a saying that goes, "Cut the edge between before and after," meaning not to make the mind that is in previous moments, allowing the traces of the present to remain. Both are bad. One must cut the interval between the previous and the present. Its meaning is to cut the edge between before and after, between now and then. The mind must not be stopped. Water embraces the sky, fire cleans the clouds. Today, do not burn the fields of Musashino. Both my spouse and I hide in the spring grass. Someone explained the meaning of this poem as follows. While white clouds gather, the morning glories are already fading. There is something I have personally reflected on and wish to advise, though I know it is only my debatable and humble opinion. I feel it is the right time. That's why I will write what I perceive. You are a master of martial arts without equal in the past or present. You are more eminent in rank, in salary, and in reputation, awake or asleep. You must never forget this great blessing, and to render this blessing, whether it be day or night, simply keep in mind to remain faithful. Loyalty consists first and foremost in making your mind correct, in disciplining your body, in not dividing your thoughts towards your Lord, not even by a hair, and in not harboring resentments or blaming others. Do not neglect your daily work at home. Be fraternal. Let no incident occur between husband and wife. Be correct in formality. Do not value lovers. Stay away from the path of sensuality. Be austere like a father and act according to the way. In employing subordinates, do not make distinctions motivated by personal feelings. Employ men who are good and attach them to you. Reflect on your own shortcomings, direct the government of your province correctly, and remove those who have no kindness. In this way, valiant men will advance every day, and those who are not will naturally be influenced. When they see that their Lord loves good, they will forsake evil and turn of their own accord towards virtue. In this way, whether lord or servant, superior or inferior, they will all be good men. And when personal desire is diluted and pride is abandoned, the wealth of the province will abound, the people will be well governed, children will remain in communion with their parents and superiors, and their alternates will work together like hands and feet. The province will become peaceful by itself. This is the principle of loyalty. An absolutely determined soldier would be your preference in any situation that arises. Even if you had the command of hundreds of thousands of men, when the mind of the one-armed cannon is correct, each of the 1,000 ends will be useful. Similarly, if the mind of your martial art is correct, mental function will be free, and even one enemy would be at the mercy of your single sword. Is that not great loyalty? Other people cannot distinguish whether the mind is correct or not. When any thought arises, both good and evil are present. If one thinks about the foundation of good and evil, and does good and refrains from evil, one's mind will become correct of its own accord. Knowing what is harmful but not abstaining from it is a disease of one's own desires, whether it be for the love of sensuality or self-indulgence. It is desiring something with the mind, even though it is a benevolent man. His good deeds would be of no use if he does not suspend his inclinations to indulge once with an ignorant man, to become attached to it, and to make an appointment with him. As long as the good man who is there is not used, it is the same as not having a good man. Even if he did not employ thousands of men, it is unlikely that there would be one who would match his lord in an emergency. As for the young ignorant and wicked who were formerly attractive, since their hearts are not correct from the outset, in no case would they be able to sacrifice in the face of a real situation. I have never heard even once, even in the past, of men with incorrect minds who held a good position in front of their lords. The appearance that this can happen when your lordship chooses apprentices is truly a bitter shame. This is something that nobody knows, stemming from an extraordinary inclination. But one can be led by bad habits and fall into wickedness. Even if one thinks that nobody knows these faults, for there is nothing so clear as that which is seen with little clarity. If they are recognized in one's own thoughts, they will be by the heaven, the earth, the gods, and the people. In this case, one is truly not safe. The protection of the province should be recognized as great disloyalty. For example, even if you proclaim your loyalty to your lord, if the people of your group are not behind you and the population of the Tagu Valley turns its back on you, all you do will be a failure. It is said that in all things, if you want to know the good and bad sides of a man, you must know the servants and subordinates he loves and employs, and the friends with whom he associates intimately. If the Lord is not correct, none of his servants and friends will be. If that is the case, he will be despised by all, and neighboring provinces will repel him. But if the Lord and his servants are good, they will be highly regarded by all. It is also said that a good man is regarded as a jewel by the province. You should experience this personally when you are in a place where people recognize you. If you avoid injustice, you will distance yourself from characterless people and love the wise. Provincial governance will be more correct, and you will be the best of all loyal in regard to the behavior of your honorable son. It is inconsistent to attack the bad actions of a child if the father himself acts incorrectly. If you first correct your behavior, then express your opinions. Not only will he naturally correct himself, but his younger brother, Master Nisena, will learn from his behavior and become virtuous. Thus father and son will both become good men. This would be a happy outcome. It is said that men are accepted or expelled based on their mental rectitude. At this moment, being a favored servant, it is absolutely unthinkable to receive bribes from all the lords of the province or to forget mental rectitude because of greed. I sincerely believe that it is a sickness to profit from the Rambu, to be proud of one's own skill in the non, and to involve oneself with the lords of the province by displaying that skill. You should not repeatedly consider the fact that the emperor recites like Sarugaku, and that the main danjo, first in courtesy, are those who present themselves most often before the yogin. In the song, it is said that it is the mind itself that leads the mind astray from the mind. Do not be brainless. The clear sound of jewels has no equal. Nothing is more precious than life, whether one is rich or poor. If one does not live long, one will not achieve one's true purpose. Even if one were to invest thousands of riches and valuables to do so, life is something that must be purchased. It is said that life is of little importance compared to the rectitude of the mind, and in reality, what is most valued is that steadfastness. Nothing is more precious than life, however, at the moment when we must part from this precious existence and rely on the rectitude of the mind. Nothing is more valued than that integrity. By closely observing the world, one can see that many people do not take it seriously enough, but suppose that someone, among 1,000, would die for a correct mind. It seems that among the humble class of servants, contrary to what one might expect, many would. However, it would be difficult for those who were wise to do the same. I was told these things half-heartedly while thinking of a long spring day when a man approached and said something like, "Although wealth truly replaces our hearts, having life is the greatest fortune of all. Thus, in times of crisis, a man will cast aside his possessions to preserve his life. But when you think that a man would not hesitate to sacrifice the life he cherishes so much for the sake of goodness and rectitude of the mind, the value of mental rectitude is greater than life itself. One can hardly know the number of those who have been slain in battle. All were soldiers who died for mental rectitude. Taking this into account, it can be said that all men value mental rectitude more than desire and life." I said something like, "To die from anger at being insulted by someone resembles mental rectitude, but it is not at all that. It is losing oneself in the anger of the moment. That is not rectitude at all. Its true name is anger. Before a person is insulted, they have already strayed from mental rectitude, and for that reason they endure the insult. If the rectitude of the mind is correct, even when associating with others, one will not be insulted by them. In being insulted, one must realize that they lost their own mental rectitude before the offense. Mental rectitude is a state of extreme importance. Its substance is nothing other than the celestial principle that gives life to things. When the human body acquires it, it is called nature. Its other names are virtue, way, heart, probity, and property. Although the name changes depending on the situation and its function is different, substantively it is one and the same thing. When written as human heart and the situation involves a natural relationship, its function is benevolence. When written as mental rectitude and the situation involves social position and integrity, its function is to not make errors in judgment clarity. Even in death, if one has not attained the principle, there is no mental rectitude. Although some may think that if a person has just died, they possessed this quality, it is considered that rectitude in substance devoid of perversity also constitutes the core of the human mind. By using the firmness of this mental core as a guiding force, everything that results will show rectitude. To scorn this core and die by desire is not a death worthy of a righteous spirit. Regarding those who die for mental rectitude, there may truly be one among 1,000 who does so. In this regard, from the moment one enters the service of a danjo, the clothing worn on one's back, the sword carried on horseback, the palanquin and all its equipment, everything without exception, is owed to the favor of one's lord. The family, the wife, the children, and one's own servants, all, along with their relations, benefit from the protection of the master. With these favors deeply ingrained, a man will face his lord's enemies on the battlefield and give his very life. This is to die for the rectitude of the mind. It is neither for the honor of the man himself, nor to obtain glory, salary, and a fief. The sincerity of the core of the mind consists solely in receiving a favor and returning it. If there were 1 person out of 100 who would die thus, then there would be 100 out of 100,000, and for every contingency there would be 100,000 men available. In reality, it would be difficult to find 100 benevolent people, regardless of the era. Whenever the country is in disorder, there might be 5,000 to 7,000 corpses after a battle. Among them, there were men who faced the enemy and made a reputation for themselves. Others were slain by the enemy without anyone noticing. It seems that all these warriors died for their rectitude, but many did not. Many died for their name and profit. The first thought is to do something for glory. The second is to think about establishing oneself and later receiving lands and rising in the world. There are individuals who accomplish remarkable feats, attract glory, and stand out, while others perish in battle. Among the older samurai, there are those who secure a name in the next battle to pass on to their descendants in their old age, or if they do not die, they will try to leave behind both name and estate. They all take their lives lightly, preoccupied with name and profit. Their death is a fiery blood born of desire. This is not a correct mentality. Those who receive kind words from their Lord and dedicate their lives to Him also die with rectitude, but no one values mental rectitude as much as they should. So those who sacrifice their lives for desire and value their existence by putting themselves in embarrassing situations remain. Those who take rectitude lightly regardless of whether they live or die. Chenjin and Shuchu died together for the rectitude of the mind. Poi and Sui were men who deeply contemplated mental firmness and regretted a servant killing his own king. Eventually, they starved to death at the foot of Mount Yongshan. In seeking men like them, we find that there are not many, even in antiquity, let alone in today's world. It is likely that there is not one who, valuing mental rectitude, would easily forsake desire like life itself. In general, people waste their lives for desire, or preserve them and cover themselves in shame. No one truly knows what mental rectitude is. All men seem to know rectitude, but they do not truly think about it. Because of this folly, when a man is upset, he is unable to bear it and spits out abusive words. The object of these insults is to mortify and take a life in retaliation. This type of man not only lacks mental rectitude, but is filled with desire. Thinking that one can commit an unpleasant action against a man and avoid verbal offense is nothing more than a manifestation of desire. It is the kind of passion that arises when one gives a stone to someone, and if that person gives gold in return, one becomes their friend. But if they give a stone in return, one cuts off their head. When a man praises another flatteringly, it is likely that those words will come back to him as well. But when he slanders and receives insults in return, he decides to cut off his head, dying himself in that act. This is desire. It is the opposite of mental rectitude, and it is the height of foolishness. All samurai have masters to serve, and wasting this life that should be given alongside one's own lord in a dispute is to misunderstand the difference between good and evil. It is above all not knowing the meaning of mental rectitude. What is called desire is not simply clinging to wealth or thinking only of the whims of silver and gold. When the eye sees colors, it is desire. When the ears hear sound, it is desire. When the nose smells fragrance, it is desire. When a single thought sprouts, it is also desire. Our body has been strengthened and produced by desire, and it is in the nature of things that all men have a clear consciousness of this. Although there is a nature devoid of desire, which is confined within the body, it is still hidden by the warm blood, and its virtue is difficult to sow. This nature is not easily protected because it reacts to the 10,000 things of the external world and is drawn by the 6 desires and immersed beneath them. This body is composed of the 5 aggregates: form, sensation, conception, volition, and consciousness. Form is the physical body. Sensation is the perception of the physical body of good and evil, right and wrong, pain and joy, suffering and pleasure. Conception means preference. It is to hate evil and desire good, to flee pain and hope for joy, to avoid suffering and desire pleasure. Abolition means to operate the body based on sensation and perception. This involves hating pain and thus obtaining pleasure, or hating evil and thus harmonizing with good things for oneself. Consciousness discriminates between good and evil, right and wrong, pain and pleasure, joy and sorrow from the previous sensations, conceptions, and volitions. Through knowledge, one knows that evil is pernicious, good is good, pain is pain, and pleasure is pleasure. Because consciousness discriminates and forms biases, it abhors the ugly and attaches to beauty, and according to its connections, the body moves because the physical body exists. There is the aggregate of sensation. In existing, there is the aggregate of feelings. In existing, there is the aggregate of conception. Because the aggregate of conception exists, the aggregate of abolition acts. Because the aggregate of abolition unfolds its actions, the aggregate of consciousness exists, and through this aggregate, that of consciousness, we discriminate between good and evil, right and wrong, ugly and beautiful. Thoughts of acceptance and rejection arise. And just as these thoughts arise, the physical body is born. It is like the sun and the moon reflecting in puddles of water. The Buddha explained that the manifestation of form in response to the world is like the moon in water. Form, sensation, conception, abolition, and consciousness returning to form. If one condenses again and again the link of the 5 aggregates according to the flow of the 2 links of the chain of existence, after receiving the body, it begins with a single thought of our consciousness. Consciousness is therefore desire. It gives rise to the body of the five aggregates. As the whole organism is something hardened by desire, if one plucks a single hair from the head, feelings of desire will arise. If one touches with the tip of a finger, the same will happen. Even if one touches with the toenail, thoughts of desire will arise. The whole body is hardened by this. In this body, condensed by desire, the core of the mind, upright and undistracted, is hidden. This mentality is not in the body of the five aggregates. It has no color or form, and is not of desire. It is unshakably correct, absolutely upright. But if one uses this mentality as a guide, everything one does will be right. This firm object is the substance of mental rectitude. Mental rectitude is the name temporarily added to it when it manifests externally. It is also called human heart. Benevolence is its function. When we indicate its essence, we say human heart. Benevolence is a designation we temporarily give it. Human heart, rectitude, property, wisdom, the substance is the same, but the names are different. These things must be understood as the core of the mind. That is why it is said that the way of confusion is that of sincerity and sympathy. Sincerity is the same as the core of the mind. Sympathy is equal to the similar mind or unity. If one succeeds in the core of the mind and sympathy, none of the 10,000 problems can go wrong. Although all these things are said, if a man is not enlightened, the explanation could last for 100 days, and he will listen all that time without a chance of obtaining the way by speaking thus. There are surely those who deny what we say. It would be better to observe the most intimate thoughts and actions of the people who give lectures and listen to the classics of Confucius. The same goes for those who teach and listen to Buddhist scriptures. This is not just a criticism of Confucianism. A person may be as eloquent as a stream, but if his mind has not been illuminated, and if he has not seen his true nature, he will not be someone to be trusted. We should be able to distinguish this quickly by a person's behavior. One day, someone expressed doubts, saying, if even those capable of seeing and hearing are of desire, if even the elevation of a single thought is of desire, how can we attain mental rectitude? Concentrating a single thought is like a rock or a tree. Thus, one is not able to act with mental rectitude for the good of one's master. If one does not act with strong will, it will be difficult to achieve. I replied, this is a justified doubt. Without thoughts in the mind, one will not turn right or left. One will not go up or down, but one will go only straight ahead. When a single thought barely arises, one heads right or left, one goes up or down, and finally, one arrives at the desired place. That is why it is called desire. The virtue of the undeniably correct is hidden. If this desire is not put into action, it is not likely that one will achieve good or evil. Even if one has the spirit to rescue a man fallen into an abyss, if one does not have hands, one cannot do it. Likewise, if a man has the spirit to push someone into an abyss but does not have hands, he cannot do it. Thus, success or failure depends on the existence of hands. When the nature of things is set aside by hands, one appropriates the power of desire. Whether one succeeds or fails, and when one considers that the correct and firm mind is our guide, and consequently acts in accordance with it, success and failure remain matters of strength. But if one does not deviate from this straight line, one cannot be called desire. That is mental rectitude. Mental rectitude is nothing other than virtue considered as the core of the mind. Consider the core of the mind as a vehicle with the willpower it carries within it. Push it where there may be failure, and it will fail. Push it where there may be success, and it will succeed. But whether it is success or failure, if one relies on the rectitude of this vehicle, of the core of the mind, one will attain mental rectitude in all situations. Nothing will be accomplished by departing from desire and being like a rock or a tree. Not departing from desire, but achieving mental rectitude without it, that is the true way. Among the gods there are famous ones and others unknown. Sumoshi, Tatsushima, Kitano, and Irano are the most famous. When we speak of the gods in general, we refer to those whose names we do not know. In referring to the worship of the gods, There are no distinctions between Yumi, Ochi, Tajima, Urano, and Kitano. We exalt and venerate the gods, no matter who they are. When venerating the god of Kitano, one sets aside the god of Urano. If venerating the god of Urano, one sets aside Kitano. By limiting a god to one place, the other gods are not appreciated. One exclusively worships that deity, excluding the others. When we speak of the gods, we do not confine them to one place. This would not establish the way of the gods. This way is established when we worship all, no matter where we are or whom we face. We must speak of this. Regarding the way of lord and vassal, the lord signifies the emperor and the vassal refers to his subjects. Lord and vassal are not terms used for people of lower rank than these, but for now we will use them in this manner. Among lords, there are some who are famous and others whose names are unknown. Among vassals, it is also possible that there are some very recognized and others who are not. When speaking of a famous lord, a man will say something like, "Our lord is Matsui of Wa," or "My lords are Yamamoto Tajima." In speaking of unknown superiors, one simply says the lord, without mentioning his name. For a vassal, the lord's way must be established. If one simply thinks in terms of the lord, and for the superior, if one simply thinks of the S, the vassal's way must be established. There was a time when it was said that a wise vassal does not serve two lords, which means that a vassal would never have two masters. As the world is in decline now, vassals are employed under different lords, and in the end, they recognize themselves in the image of wandering assistants while proclaiming their own merits. Thus are the present times. A lord saying he is not satisfied with such and such a man will drive him out of his house and cover him with shame. This also puts the way of lord and vassal, master and servant, in disorder. Even if a servant serves in different households, he must remember that he has only one lord. This means that the lord will be unique and unknown, for if it is so, the lord's way will be established. Even if serving in one family after another, he must think of that lord as the lord, and this one as the master. In this way he will think of the Lord with great devotion, and although the family may change its mind, the Lord will remain the same from beginning to end. If a man thinks, "My Lord is Matsu of Wa," but in reality he is a boor, as long as he receives a salary or land and lives in this world, his mind will not fully think of the Lord. When he is employed again under the orders of God, Yamamoto Tajima, the same spirit will accompany him. Thus, no matter where he goes, he will never understand the meaning of the word Lord, and he will probably not prosper. It is better not to ask who may be the superior, but simply to direct one's thoughts to the Lord and consider mental rectitude towards him, without needing to mention his name. If one serves the Lord with the thought of never walking in front of him, or even dishonoring his shadow for as long as one receives his support, whether for a month, a year, or even 10 years, even while serving in many places, the superior will be only one. The Lord must not interfere with the vassal's path, even in the case of changing servants. Love and sympathy must reside deep in one's heart. There should be no distinctions between newcomers and veterans, and one must act with all using great charity. In this way, servants will have no name, and the Lord will not either, and the way of lord and vassal, master and servant will be established. There must be no distinctions between the new servant who has just started working and the veterans who have 10 or 20 years of service. All men must be treated with love and sympathy, and each must be regarded as my servant. It may be that salary and land differ greatly, but there must be no differences within the spirit of the human heart and love. Even if a servant has just begun his employment, the sense of thinking of the Lord will not be that of today's Lord. This is not how the way of lord and vassal unfolds. Lipo said, "Heaven and earth are the inn of the traveller of the 10,000 things. Fleeting time is the traveller of 100 generations. This floating life is like a dream. How long will our happiness last?" The ancients would light lamps and enjoy themselves at night. There was indeed a reason for that. Speaking of things, it does not only refer to that insensitivity. It is even said that man is a thing. The space between heaven and earth is the inn for the round-trip journey of men and things. In the end, there is nothing permanent. The passage of time is like the endless walk of the traveler. and the current passage of spring, autumn, and winter has not changed for 100 generations. The body is like a dream. When one sees it and wakes up, no trace remains. How much time is left for the quest? Not in vain the ancients thought from evening until morning, looking at lamps and enjoying themselves during the hours of darkness. At this stage, one can fall into error. There must be rules for entertainment, and if there are, entertainment will endure no harm. The person without rules will become insane. If one who entertains does not fall into error, they will not exceed these limits. What we understand by rules are fixed boundaries in general, relative to all things like the joints of bamboo. Entertainment must largely have a border. It is not good to exceed it. The nobility of the court has its own entertainments, the samurai class has theirs, and the priests as well. Each must enjoy their own entertainment. It could be said that engaging in inappropriate entertainments amounts to deviating from one's rules. For the court nobility, there are Chinese and Japanese poetry and wind and string instruments. With them they will pass from night to day, and there should be nothing amiss. It is reasonable that the samurai class and the priests also have their own entertainments. Strictly speaking, for the priests there should be no entertainment. However, it is said that in public not even a needle can enter, but in private as much as a horse and a carriage pass. This means that they sympathize with the human spirit, and recognizing that the world has changed, we should allow them to have their own entertainments too. As long as they gather alone at night, they should be allowed to compose Chinese and Japanese poetry. Even linked verses can be correct. On the other hand, it is not wrong for them to also incline their hearts towards the moon and cherry blossoms, and accompanied by youths of 14 or 15 years, go to a place where one can see the moon under the flowers, with a good jar of sake in hand, sharing a few cups among themselves. Having a small inkstone or paper to write would not be at all tasteless. But even these simple entertainments are not considered correct for a priest with a religious spirit. With more reason, other unrefined entertainments are excluded. It would not be surprising if both the nobility and the samurai, realizing that this floating world is but a dream, light lamps and enjoy themselves all night. Some say, all is a dream. The only thing to do is to play. These people agitate their minds beyond the limit, plunge into pleasure, and go to the extremes of luxury. Although they quote the words of the ancient. Men, they are as far from their thoughts as snow is from fire. When Ipponjonin met Oto Kokui, the founder of Kokui, in the village of Yura in the Kei province, he said to him, "I composed a poem." Kuchi replied, "Listen, Shonin." He recited, "When I sing, both the Buddha and myself cease to exist. Only the voice remains saying, Namu Amida Butsu." Kuchi said, "There is something wrong in the last lines. Do you not think so, Shonin?" He then retired to Kumano and meditated for 21 days. When he passed through Yura again, he said, "This is how I wrote it. When I sing, both the Buddha and myself cease to exist. Namu Amida Butsu. Namu Amida Butsu." Kokushi enthusiastically agreed and exclaimed, "That's it, you got it." This was written in the notes of Kogaku Oso. We should revisit it again and again. I will now speak of the 10 essential qualities. These are form, nature, incarnation, power, function, latent cause, external cause, latent effect, manifest effect, and total inseparability of one from the other. The 10 worlds are those of hell, hunger, animality, anger, humanity, heaven, teaching, Buddhahood realization, and Buddhahood. The 10 essential qualities are thus, in general, from the worlds of hell, hunger, animality, anger, humanity, and heaven to the worlds of learning, Buddhahood realization, and Buddhahood, all possess the 10 essential qualities in general. Something that is born cannot lack form, which is why we speak of the essential quality of form. Even the sound of its song changes. The nightingale sings the nightingale's song. The cuckoo sings its own respectively. Does each of them, to express its own form, even change the song it sings? Certainly the mountain cuckoos and the valley nightingales recite their own songs, but they can understand that the sound changes and so does the form. The song has the capacity to refine its context, and the context of words is something we combine with the rectitude of the mind. Thus, they come to know themselves. If something has a form, it will also have a nature. Even though the nature of Buddha is always the same, the form adapts to what receives it, and thus changes. All sentient beings have the nature of Buddha, so even if I am lost in hell, the worlds of hunger and animality are immutable. This is explained thus. Even in the sutras, if they place multiple mirrors around a pedestal and a lamp in the center, the light will reflect everywhere. The lamp is unique, but it reflects in every crystal. This is an example of how the nature of Buddha is unique, but is received by all sentient beings of the 10 worlds, even the hungry and the animals. This is called the example of the mirror and lamp in the Flower Garland Sutra. Personification means the incarnation of the law. In all 10,000 things, there is incarnation and function. Form arises in incarnation. Then, after making the full circuit, it disappears. Personification itself never exhausts. Let's say snow and ice are the function and water is the incarnation. When water solidifies, it becomes ice, but it then melts again and returns to the original liquid. We thus understand that water is a personification. This is an example of the manifestation of the incarnation. When the 10,000 forms arise from the incarnation of the law, and the ordinary man is unable to see beyond the form, he cannot drink the corporeity. When something occurs, it is said to have manifested. From the standpoint of enlightenment, we say it has manifested. When the corporeity returns and one can no longer perceive snow on the peaks, the ice in the depths of the mountain melts and the sound rises in the foothills, the spring water. This has been written about the incarnation. If a thing possesses form, nature, and incarnation, it must also have power. Power is the force necessary to operate effectively. It is what lies behind the realization of all phenomena, what produces the effect of all things. It is power. The constancy of the eternal green pine amidst the lush leaves on the mountain in summer is particularly known in songs. This happens because it does not change color even with frosts or late autumn rains. It remains constant even during the coldest season of the year, and that's why songs are sung about it, considering it as the essential quality of power. Because power exists, function imparts performance to all things. If one continues to strive to learn one Chinese character today and another tomorrow, one should be able to grasp the full meaning of function. This must be understood through the saying, "The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step." Considering form, nature, incarnation, power, and function, no matter what one does, it can be done at will. This is the latent cause. If something is not achieved, it is due to its own judgment, and nothing can be done without the latent cause and the external cause. It is likely that one will not attain the state of Buddha. The Chinese character for latent cause, for example, also reads as depends on. This means that depending on spring is the latent cause, and even if one has not planted it firmly, if one does not have the help of rain and dew, it will not grow. The help of rain and dew is the external cause. Depending on water and dew, the plant will grow, and there will be fruits in autumn. This is the latent effect. When the heart is full and does not rest, my hopes are after 1,000 pods of the honeysuckle vine. This means that the establishment of the honeysuckle is the latent cause of marriage. Furthermore, it says that matchmaking is the external cause. And finally, the couple becomes husband and wife and prospers with children. This is an example of latent effect. Similarly, if one wants to become a Buddha and does not act first in accordance with the latent cause, one will not attain the state of Buddha. The latent cause is a discipline that will yield the effect later on. The word effect has the meaning of fruit. According to that of the latent cause of spring, one obtains the fruit in autumn. This is an example of the state of Buddha. The external cause is seen in the previous notes. The boat will surely sail beyond the Guarda Cape, guided as it is by the winds of the Muo mountain. The boat is the latent cause. The wind is the external cause. Reaching the shore is the latent effect. Without the boat, one cannot reach the other side, and even if the boat exists, one cannot be without the external cause of the wind. This is called the harmony of the latent cause and the external cause. The winds of the Muo mountain must be considered as the external cause. If one desires to become a Buddha, one cannot do without a discipline of the latent cause, because plants can see their maturity on the tops of the branches. The branches that have grown with Nikibai's pears, that is the latent effect. Attaining the state of Buddha is like planting pear trees and then seeing them grow to the Aiki berry on branches that grow thick with pears that ripen, with pears that never fail. Even in the dream, this is the original poem. The Aiki berry is there in manifest effect. Wait, and you will see, when you who treat others so cruelly try to love, you will surely know what you feel. This love poem means even if you treat me so cruelly, you do not lack love. Perhaps you will eventually know what love is. At that time, you will have your reward. If you do good in this life, you will be rewarded with good in the next. If you do evil, you will receive the same. This is the manifest effect. If the latent cause is good, the latent effect will be good. If, on the contrary, it is bad, then the effect will be similar. It is like an echo responding to a voice or a shadow accompanying a form. One who disciplines oneself with the latent cause in one life obtains the reward in the next. It is natural. But there are also occasions where a present latent cause is accompanied by a present manifest effect, a past latent cause followed by a present manifest effect, and a present latent cause followed by a future manifest effect, going forward and backward, appearing before or after. And this is something that cannot be avoided. There is also the simultaneous latent cause and effect. One can take the example of the flower as the latent cause and the fruit as the manifest effect. In a melon, the flower and the fruit grow at the same time. In the rice plant, the fruit, specifically the grain, grows and the flower buds on top of it. One can take these things as an example of total inseparability from the essential quality of form to the essential quality of manifest effect. There is no alteration from beginning to end. It moves from root to branch, and this is called the 10 points. The end signifies going all the way. Of course, it's the 10 worlds. All living beings, even small worms, possess these 10 essential qualities, up to the non-living. It's no different than that. Let's take the example of chestnut fruits and persimmons. To say they have neither pain nor sadness is judging from a human perspective. One can appreciate that they are naturally endowed with both pain and sadness. The appreciation of pain in herbs and trees does not differ from the expression of suffering in humans. When they are watered and cared for, they grow and seem happy. When they are cut and fall, the withering of their leaves is no different from a person's death. Humans do not know their suffering without pain, and when herbs and trees see the sorrows of people, they do so with the same regard as humans, and probably think that we too do not have pain or sadness. It simply seems that we do not know the affairs of herbs and trees, nor do they know ours, and so it is described in the books of Confucius. When there are fences or earth walls covered on the north side of growing plants, they lean towards the south. Appreciating this, it is clear that plants know what harms them, even though they have no eyes. In sleeping at night and opening in the day, the lily is another example we could use. However, this does not only happen to lilies, but to all herbs and trees that do not lack it. It's because we don't pay attention that we walk without knowing. Those who fully understand herbs and trees are wise. We do not understand these things because of our ordinary and conformist minds. If something is sentient or insentient, it's calculated approximately. Probably nothing that exists lacks sentience. We do not say they are insentient because they do not belong to the category of things that are. It is said that when a chicken is cold, it flies to the trees. When a duck wants to warm up, it swims in the water. Isn't it similar to wondering why a duck swims in the water when it's cold? It does not have the sense of cold, or why a chicken flies to the trees when it needs warmth. It doesn't have the sense of cold either. Water is cold and that's its nature. Fire is hot and that's considered its essence. From the perspective of fire, water has no nature. From the perspective of water, fire lacks nature. Even though one may think so, in fact, both have their own nature. One cannot say that something does not have it if one observes the phenomenon closely. One cannot think that what is between heaven and earth is really different if one sees differences. It's because of the narrowness of our mind. It's like Mount Fuji is hidden by a dense tree with many branches and leaves, and I cannot see it. But how can Mount Fuji be hidden by just one tree? It's simply because of the narrowness of my vision and because the tree stands in front, making Mount Fuji appear hidden. We continue to think that the tree hides Mount Fuji, but this is due to the limitation of my vision. Not understanding things, people tend to pretend to know and criticize those who understand. And although it seems they mock others, they are actually mocking themselves. At least those who truly understand must think so. Pay close attention to the current world. The earth is a mother and the sky a father. If we plant the seed of the chestnut or persimmon in the earth, the shoot appears, and the fruit of the persimmon or chestnut will emerge without change. In this way it is raised by a mother and father. To say that something is placed means that it comes from another place. Also, for the human being, the earth is the mother and the sky the father, and the phenomenon that becomes a child is something brought back and housed from another place. The current existence consists mainly of the thought of things in this present life. For this reason, this present existence is also called the present existence. When this existence ends, what is called the ultimate existence appears. Then, the ultimate existence changes, and there is a subsequent reality or reincarnation. In either case, there is absolutely no change in the mind that is in this present body. Even in ultimate existence, human eyes cannot see it because of its darkness. As for the ultimate existence of those who were deeply connected to this world, there are cases of people who have seen them because it is something unusual. People doubt these processes and attribute the transformations to foxes, dogs, or raccoons, or explain them as illusory visions of the dead. Both situations can occur. Even admitting that, we should not classify each case as one or the other. Real things, even in this world, such things are not only in the mouths of men, they have also been transmitted by the feathers of those who lived in the world of the way and who were themselves men of the way. When we fall short of the wisdom of those who wrote these things, we must understand that we will have doubts when we see things in the midst of a dream. Although we do not perceive them with the eyes and ears we were born with, we clearly encounter people, say things, hear sounds, appreciate colors, and even have sexual relations. We struggle with what concerns us every day, and just when we think we are about to achieve our desires, we wake up. This is awakening when we realize it was a dream. When we sleep, we never think, this is a dream or this is real. While asleep, the body remains alive and attached and cannot go where it would like. But with the strength of its own thoughts, it can see these places by drawing them towards it. When one truly dies and abandons one's own body, one goes where one wishes, like a cat released from a rope. Even if the thoughts themselves are the same as in a dream, it's as if one can freely go wherever one wants, amidst deep darkness or when doors and windows are closed. This body as a barrier cannot penetrate into the innermost sanctuary. But the mind can make contact with what is there, just as thoughts can pass through the silver mountain or iron wall. There's little chance that this mystery will be understood by the ordinary person. The Buddha and the patriarchs understood it, but the common people are completely ignorant of it. Without knowing it, they have doubts, and foolishness adds to foolishness. There are many things I don't know, and that's why I simply say they don't exist. Let's say out of 100 things I know 6 or 7. When someone tells me about the others, if I say they don't exist, then 90 things disappear. But if I recognize 15 or something like that among those that didn't exist, 5 or 6 others emerge. For those who know 20 or 30, the number of non-existent objects decreases to only 70. If someone knows 60 things out of 100, the remaining 30 or 40 become like the ones we just mentioned. And when one knows all these things and thinks there's nothing else to know, it's because one still doesn't know. If a person advances in complete clarity, they should be capable of perceiving all things. If there's something known, probably no one will say otherwise, but if someone does, it's because they themselves are ignorant of the matter. An extremely foolish man should eventually learn something through their faith. On the other hand, this doesn't mean a half-done mastery is the basis for a great injury. I understand that the 5 roots do not survive in the afterlife at the same time. The 5 roots of our current life are transferred to the 6th sense of consciousness. The 5 roots then have no form, but continue to function as the 6th sense of perception. Consciousness has no form, but because you have the faculties of seeing and hearing in a dream when the physical eyes and ears are not functioning, a different form occurs and you can hear and see. It's called consciousness because even though its form doesn't exist, its function does. If the form doesn't exist and is something we cannot know, it's better to simply say seeing or hearing because these senses are transferred to consciousness and move to a second level. The forms of the 5 roots are discarded and their functions are taken over by consciousness. Although the 5 roots are not present in metacognition, the distinction of the 5 senses is no different from present existence. From present existence, one is unable to see this from the outside, but the person involved will be like the present world. Furthermore, even though the existence of the body is not denied, it's so vague that it's hard to see. When a bird flies in an empty sky, it becomes less clear as it moves away, and we think it has disappeared. Even though we have lost sight of the form, it doesn't mean it has vanished and ceased to exist. We don't see a person in the afterlife. An individual in this state may see us as they did when alive, but people are unaware of it. The form of people who committed grave sins and are in the afterlife is apparent. People naturally see this and call them ghosts and similar things. This is not something non-existent. If people were deeply attached to this world, their forms will not be weak. It's like boiling broth to make medicine. If the ingredients are weak, the broth will be too. If they're thick, the broth will be thick. What's used to cook it will be clearly distinguished. Very thin broth will resemble water, and people won't know what broth is, but will simply see it as water. In the afterlife, the form of someone who was deeply attached to the world is very evident, but the person with a weak form will resemble air and we won't be able to see them. Yet, they will be able to see us because I have a form, I can be seen. As their forms are weak, I am unable to appreciate it. In the Ming Shi, this is exemplified with barley grain. With just one barley grain, the root grows. And although it's endowed with the same functions as the original barley, if there's no unification of water and earth, it cannot become barley. The human mind and the objective world merge, diverse thoughts emerge, and from these many others simultaneously arise, propelled by these reasonings. This bodily form is received and produced. It's not something foreign that suddenly fell from the sky. The myriad things appear when one begins with the thought that something has no beginning. When one carefully seeks its origin, being a single thought without beginning, one finds it has none. By not having a specific one, the birth of the infinite variety of things could be called a mystery. The annals of the tea sword, probably, like a martial artist not fighting to win or lose, not caring about strength or weakness, and not stepping back a single step. The enemy doesn't see me, and I don't strike the enemy, entering into a place where heaven and earth are not yet divided, where yin and yang have not yet arrived. I quickly and necessarily achieve an effect. By saying probably, I indicate that I'm not sure. Originally, this character was read as meaning a cover, for example, when putting a cover over a row of boxes. Even if we don't know with certainty what has been placed inside, if we use our imagination, we can guess 6 or 7 times out of 10. In this case, I also don't know for sure, but I timidly deduce that it must be so. In reality, it's a writing we use. Even in things we know for sure, we do it to be modest and not give the appearance of speaking knowingly. The martial artist is as the character indicates. Not striving to win or lose, not caring about strength or weakness, means not competing for victory, not caring about defeat, and not interfering with the functions of strength and weakness. Not advancing or retreating a single step means not taking a step forward or backward. Victory is achieved without moving from where one is. The me of the enemy not seeing me refers to my true self, not my perceived self. People may see the perceived self. It's rare for them to discern the true self. That's why I say the enemy doesn't see me. Since I don't have a personal version of the perceived self, I also don't see the martial art of the perceived self of the opponent. Even if I say I don't see the opponent, it doesn't mean I can't see them right in front of my own eyes. It's a singular thing to be able to see one without perceiving the other. Well, the true self is the one that existed before the division of heaven and earth, and before being born from father and mother. This self is the one within me, within the birds and beasts, within the herbs and trees, and within all phenomena. This is exactly what's called the Buddha nature. This self has neither form nor figure, it has neither birth nor death. It's not a self that can be seen with the help of your current physical vision. Only the man who has received enlightenment is capable of appreciating it. It's said that one who sees it has observed their own nature and become a Buddha. Long ago, the man honored by the world retreated into the snowy mountains, and after enduring 7 years of suffering, he became enlightened. This was the enlightenment of the true self. The ordinary man lacks the strength of faith and doesn't have the persistence of 3 or 5 years. But those who study the way are absolutely diligent, for 10, 20, and even up to 24 hours a day. They gather great faith, speak with those who have wisdom, and ignore adversity and suffering, just as a father who has lost a son does not deviate an inch from his established resolve. They think deeply, ask questions over and over, and finally reach the place where even Buddhist doctrine and law fade away. And they are naturally able to see that. The following expression, entering into a place where heaven and earth are not yet divided, where yin and yang have not yet arrived, I quickly and necessarily achieve an effect, means looking toward the place that existed before heaven became heaven and earth became earth, before yin and yang came into existence. It's not using thought or reasoning and looking ahead in this way. The moment of achieving a great effect will surely come. Now the determined man uses the sword but does not kill others. He uses the sword and gives life. When it's necessary to kill, he does so, and when it's necessary to give life, he does so. And when he kills, he does it with deep concentration, and when he gives life, he does it without distraction. He is capable of seeing evil without observing what is correct or incorrect, without trying to discriminate, and eventually does it well. Walking on water is like walking on land, and walking on land is like walking on water. If he can attain this freedom, he will feel perplexed by no one in the world. In all things he will be beyond companions. The determined man means the man realized in the martial arts. He uses the sword but does not kill others, meaning that even if he doesn't use the sword to attack, when others face this principle, they retreat and become dead men of their own accord. It's not necessary to kill them. Using the sword and giving life to others means that while facing his opponents, he leaves everything to the movements of the other man and is capable of observing him at will. When it's necessary to kill, he does so. When it's necessary to give life, he does so. And when he kills, he does it with deep concentration. When he gives life, he does it without distraction. This means that whether giving life or taking it, he does so freely in a state of total concentration, and the meditator becomes one with the object of meditation. He is capable of seeing good and evil without observing what is correct or incorrect, without trying to judge things, but is capable of doing it well. If one places a mirror, any form in front of it will be mechanically reflected. Various forms will be clearly reflected without any intention of distinguishing this from that. By turning his whole mind into a mirror, the man who practices martial arts will have no intention of discriminating the correct from the incorrect. But depending on the shine of the mirror of his thoughts, it will be perceived without him thinking about it. Walking on water is like walking on land, and walking on land is like walking on water. The meaning of this phrase would not be discovered by anyone who is not enlightened about the very origin of humanity. If the fool walks on the earth as if walking on water, when he walks on the earth he loses balance. If he walks on the water as if walking on the earth, when he finds himself on something liquid, he will think he can really walk there. Regarding this matter, the man who forgets both earth and water must reach this principle for the first time. If he is capable of attaining this freedom, he will not be in a dilemma about what to do, regardless of what he faces in life. In all things he will be beyond companions. This means that as he will resemble no one else in the world, he will be like Churyamuni, who said in the sky above and the earth below, "Only I am honorable." If you want to realize it while walking, standing, sitting or lying down, speaking or remaining silent during tea and rice, never neglect the effort. You must quickly fix your gaze on the goal and examine deeply both the movement and the return. Thus you must directly look at things as the months accumulate and the years pass. A light should appear in the darkness. You will receive wisdom without needing a master, and you will develop a mysterious skill without trying. at that time. This does not depart from the ordinary but transcends it. By its name I call it Taya. You want to attain that. The question indicates what I described earlier. It refers to whether you're trying to understand the meaning of all that came before. Walking, stopping, sitting or lying down, all these actions receive the name of the four dignities. All people participate in them. Speaking and remaining silent refers to the time when we talk about things and don't utter a word. During tea and rice, it means while drinking tea and eating rice, you must never neglect the effort. You must quickly fix your gaze on the goal and examine deeply, both going and returning. Thus you must directly look at things. This phrase alludes to the fact that you must never be negligent or remiss in your efforts. Moreover, you must constantly return to yourself. You must fix your gaze on the goal and examine deeply these foundations. Always move forward considering what would be beneficial to you and avoiding what would harm you, all while observing this principle in all things. As the months accumulate and the years pass, it should seem to you that a light emerges by itself in the darkness. This means, just in this sense, that you must continue your efforts tirelessly as you progress with the growth of months and years. The acquisition you will make by yourself of the mysterious principle will be like suddenly finding a lamplight in a dark night. You will receive wisdom without a master. It means that you acquire this fundamental wisdom without it being transmitted to you by a superior. You will develop a mysterious skill effortlessly. Because the actions of ordinary men come from their consciousness, they are all actions of the created phenomenal world and are linked to suffering. Similarly, because non-created actions are generated from this wisdom, only they are natural and peaceful at this moment. This precisely means the same thing, indicates the moment when you receive wisdom without needing a master, and when you generate a mysterious skill effortlessly. This does not depart from the ordinary, but transcends it. It means that this skill of the Creator is not generated from the unusual, as only the actions of ordinary character become non-created. This principle never departs from or separates from the ordinary, which does not mean that the ordinary actions in the world of the created actions of the ordinary man are completely different. That's why it's said to take us away from the ordinary, but transcend it by its name. I call it Taya. Taya is the name of an ancient Chinese sword that has no equal in the world. This famous jewel-encrusted weapon can freely cut through anything, from rigid metal and tempered steel to dense and hardened gems and stones. Under heaven, there is nothing that can stop it. The person who possesses this non-created mysterious skill will not be intimidated by the commander of vast armies or a numerous enemy force. It's the same as saying that there is nothing that can hinder the blade of this famous sword. That's why I call this mysterious skill the Taya sword. All men are equipped with the sharp Taya sword, and in each one it is perfectly complete. Those who understand it clearly are feared even by the Maras, but those who fail to understand it are deceived even by the heretics. On one hand, when two individuals with the same skill confront each other, there is no conclusion to the encounter. It's like Muni holding the flower and Kayapa's subtle smile. On the other hand, raising one and understanding the other three, or distinguishing subtle differences in importance at first sight, are examples of ordinary absence. If someone masters this, they will quickly cut you into 3 pieces before you even rise and the other 3 understand each other. How much more could this happen if you find yourself face to face with them? All men are armed with the sharp Taya sword, and each one has it perfectly complete, which means the recognized weapon that no one on earth can stop is not granted to only a few men. All, without exception, are equipped with it. It is not inadequate for anyone, and it is entirely whole. It is a matter of the mind. It is not born with your birth and will not die with your death. If this is true, it is said to be your original face. The sky cannot cover it, the earth cannot support it, fire cannot burn it, water cannot moisten it, not even the wind can penetrate it. There is nothing on earth that can stop it. Those who understand this well are feared even by the Maras, but those who cannot understand it are deceived even by the heretics. For one who is clearly enlightened about their original face, there is nothing in the universe that obscures or limits their vision. Therefore, there is no way to implement the supernatural power of the Maras. Such a person sees to the depths of their own intentions. the Maras fear them and avoid approaching. In contrast, the person who is in darkness and lost regarding their original face accumulates all sorts of confused and misleading thoughts that will then be infused within them. The heretics are capable of deceiving and swindling such a person. When two individuals with the same ability face off, there is no conclusion to the encounter. This means that if two men who have entered their original face challenge each other and each draws the Taya sword to fight, it would be impossible to conclude the matter. If one were to ask, this could be compared to the meeting of Sakyamuni and Kayapa. Sakyamuni holding the flower and Kayapa's subtle smile at the Vulture Peak assembly. When Jack Chuni was about to die, he held a single red lotus, showed it to 80,000 monks, and all remained silent. Only Zakapa smiled, knowing at that moment that Zakapa had been enlightened. Sakyamuni entrusted him with the correct doctrine that does not depend on the written word and is transmitted particularly without hindrance, and placed the Buddha seal on him. Since then, the correct doctrine has been transmitted in India through 28 successions to Bodhidharma. In China, it has been transmitted since Bodhidharma in 6 generations to the 6th patriarch, Master Sen Tang Chien. As this master incarnated into a Bizarpa, now known as Buddhism, the law flourished in China, spreading its leaves and branches, rapidly promulgating the 5 houses and the 7 sixths, to finally be transmitted to the Japanese priests Daio and Daito by the priest Naishi Suang. Thus it has been transferred from master to disciple until today. The doctrine of holding the flower and smile, that is, of reaching and unveiling through conjecture, must drink in the breath of all Buddhas while swallowing its own voice. Although there is truly no way to express this principle if its interpretation is followed, one could invoke the example of taking water from one container and pouring it into another in such a way that the waters mix and cannot be distinguished anymore. This is the moment when the eyes of Sakyamuni and Kayapa meet and become one. There is no relativity between martial artists of all disciplines. There is only 1 in 1,000 who has grasped the meaning of holding the flower and the subtle smile. However, if someone had the firmest of intentions and truly wanted to understand it, they should discipline themselves for another 30 years. To be mistaken about this would not simply be a matter of not mastering martial arts, but it would center them in hell like an arrow shot from a bow. That is truly terrifying. Raising one and understanding the other 3 means that once one part is shown, the other 3 are immediately understood. Distinguishing subtle differences in importance at first sight refers to the eye's function in perceiving extremely subtle differences in importance. The man who is capable of visually measuring any weight of gold and silver without making the slightest mistake is an intelligent and skilled person. These examples illustrate common intelligence. What this expression means is that such skillful individuals are ordinary and belong to the crowd. Therefore, there is nothing special about them. If someone has mastered this, they will quickly cut you into 3 pieces even before one is raised, and the 3 are understood. This refers to the person who has been enlightened regarding the cause of the Buddha's appearance in the world. It is he who will quickly cut you into 3 parts, even before it is considered that the 3 are understood, or any indication appears. Therefore, I suppose that in encountering someone like that, there is nothing to be done. How much more could this happen if you find yourself face to face with him? A man who has acquired such speed and subtlety when facing another man head-on will attack so easily that his opponent will never realize they have been struck. Ultimately, a man like that never shows the tip of his sword. Even lightning cannot keep up with his pace. His speed is such that he disappears even before the fast wind of the storm subsides. Regarding the speed of the technique, this means that even lightning, which disappears just when you think you've seen it, cannot penetrate the movements of this man. Concerning his swiftness, he disappears even faster than the fine sand grains that are blown away before the storm. Without having the technique, if you end up confused or bewildered, it means that without this skill, you end up clinging to raising your sword or applying your death, damaging your own sword or injuring your hand, and losing the ability to be skilled cannot be guessed by impressions or knowledge. Impressions or knowledge refer to understanding and discrimination in the human heart. Guessing means calculating and imagining things or what it refers to. It means that no matter how much you try to calculate or imagine through impressions or knowledge, It will not. Be useful. Therefore separate things. This is not transmitted through words and speeches. It is not learned through any doctrine. For the true martial artist, there is no way to transmit it through words. Furthermore, it is not possible to teach or learn through doctrine what posture to adopt or where to strike. This is the law of special transmission, beyond instruction. It is a doctrine outside the teaching of an instructor, a doctrine that particularly demands self-illumination and self-realization. There is no established rule to manifest this ability, no ordered action, no contrary action, not even the sky determines it. So, what is the nature of this? The ancients said that when a house does not have a pai painting, it is as if it does not have ghosts. If a man has hardened himself and reached this principle, he will control everything under heaven with a single sword. Those who study this, if they are not thoughtful, there is no established rule to manifest this great skill. If the great skill of the law of this special transmission manifests before you, it will do so freely without there being an established rule. Yet it is called great skill because it extends in the 10 directions and misses nowhere, not even at the tip of a rabbit's hair. An established rule is a law or regulation. There is no law or regulation to shape things concerning the manifestation of this great skill. Ordered action, contrary action, not even the sky determines this. The man who manifests this great skill, whether he acts in an ordered or contrary manner, is free and unobstructed. So what is the nature of this? This indicates facing a person and questioning what something really consists of. The ancients said that when a house does not have a pai painting, it is as if it does not have ghosts. This is a response to the previous question. The pai has a cow's body, a man's head, and it is an animal like no other known. It eats dreams and misfortunes, and in China, a drawing of it is made to place at the entrance of the house, or hang it on the interior pillars. In summary, placing an illustration of pai prevents the entry of misfortune. The person who has had no ghosts in their house from the beginning would not even think to make a pai painting and hang it somewhere. That is, one who has acquired the use of the ordered and the contrary, because even the sky cannot determine what is in their mind, transcends completely pain and pleasure, has no misfortunes in the body or in the house. That is why their mind does not desire a pai image, and their own world will be a thing of beauty. If a man has hardened himself and reached this principle, he will control everything under heaven with a single sword. This means that if one disciplines themselves in this manner, by meticulously tempering pure metal, they become instantly free, like the swift drawing of a weapon. One should be like the founder of the Han dynasty, controlling everything under heaven with a single sword. Those who study this, if they are not thoughtful, those who study the mysterious principle of this sword, should not easily adopt irrational notions, but they must strive to increase their own brilliance by continuing their own efforts intensely. They must not be negligent, even for a moment.